I revealed myself before a group of men, and their reactions were. The evening air was crisp, infused with the subtle scent of rain, and the rich aroma of fallen leaves. I found myself seated in solitude on the slender balcony of our apartment, nestled on a tranquil street in Boston. The city resonated in the distance, a soft, steady murmur that had woven itself into the fabric of my existence. Below, the golden leaves floated gently from the trees, spinning like delicate dancers before coming to rest on the pavement. It ought to have been a tranquil scene, yet tranquility was the furthest emotion from my mind. Regret, guilt, longing, they all bore down on me, heavy and suffocating. I embraced myself. As though I could keep my spiraling thoughts from falling apart, the previous year unfolded like a haze of poor decisions and suppressed feelings, each instant flowing into the next, pulling me deeper from the existence I once recognized. As I observed the leaves drifting down, I found myself reflecting on my own descent. How had I allowed everything to unravel so utterly beyond my grasp? Andrew and I had constructed a life together over the past 8 years, a life that once seemed sturdy and unassailable. He was a creator, passionate, talented, and deeply dedicated to his craft. I admired how his eyes would sparkle when he talked about a project, his hands tracing invisible lines in the air as he spoke. Our days brimmed with uncomplicated delights, preparing meals side by side in our small kitchen, exploring the trails of the Berkshires, enjoying serene moments with a cup of tea. It may not have been flawless, but it belonged to us. I can still recall how his laughter would resonate throughout our apartment. How he would sweep me into a dance whenever his favorite song filled the air, regardless of our surroundings. A year ago, everything transformed. Andrew had begun collaborating with Ryan, a driven young developer who appeared to possess every trait Andrew found himself lacking: self-assurance, charisma, and a nearly audacious ambition. Initially, their partnership seemed full of potential, even thrilling. Ryan possessed a unique ability to transform the unattainable into something within reach, infusing vitality into concepts that Andrew had been reluctant to explore. For a time, it seemed as though Andrew's imagination had been sparked anew. But it wasn't long before Ryan revealed his authentic self. He claimed credit for Andrew's contributions to a significant project, an act of betrayal that left Andrew professionally humiliated and emotionally devastated. Andrew withdrew into his own thoughts after that. He devoted countless hours in his studio, crafting plans that would remain hidden from the world. The man who once brought joy and comfort into our lives has now turned into a mere echo of his former self. I attempted to connect with him through my words, my actions, and even through silence, yet nothing appeared to penetrate the barrier he had constructed around himself. One evening, I found myself beside him, observing the flickering light of a candle on the coffee table, and it struck me that I was sitting next to a stranger. Gradually, irritation started to overshadow my worry, and I discovered myself pulling back as well. One evening, a friend persuaded me to leave the house, insisting that I required a respite from the weight of my daily routine. She asked me to join a cozy gathering at Ryan's apartment. It would be a laid-back evening filled with tea and engaging conversation. Initially, I wavered, but ultimately I consented, believing that a shift in surroundings might aid in clarifying my thoughts. Upon my arrival, Ryan welcomed me with his characteristic charm, his effortless smile disarming me in spite of myself. His apartment was pristine, adorned with a blend of contemporary furnishings and unique accents, framed drawings gracing the walls, and a well-organized collection of books lining the shelves. She offered me a cup of tea and motioned for me to take a seat by the window, where the distant city lights sparkled. We conversed for what seemed like an eternity. He inquired about my life, my aspirations, my frustrations, matters Andrew hadn't inquired about in months. There was something captivating about. He listened intently, as if each word I spoke held significance. I discovered that I was revealing parts of myself to him in an unexpected manner, sharing fragments of my being that I believed were hidden. I had become ensnared in the dull routine of my daily life. At one moment, the dialogue faded, and we found ourselves in silence. Quietude. The burden of unexpressed thoughts lingering in the space around us. As I lifted my eyes, I discovered him observing me, his stare unwavering and inscrutable. "You deserve to feel acknowledged, Martha," he said gently, his voice soft and earnest. Before I could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushed against mine tentatively, as if offering me a chance to pull away. However, I did not. The kiss deepened, and for a brief, fleeting moment, the world outside his apartment faded away. Every ounce of guilt, every thread of regret, every whisper of doubt. It dissolved, leaving behind merely the glimmer of something I hadn't experienced in years. As I finally withdrew, the burden of reality descended upon me with overwhelming force. I muttered something about needing to go, and rushed out of the apartment, my heart pounding and my mind racing. As I strolled home, the ember from that kiss remained, both exhilarating and daunting me in equal parts. Deep down, I understood that I had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. The journey back was. The evening unfolded like a journey into another realm. The city, typically bustling and full of life, felt subdued, as though the very atmosphere had taken on the heaviness of my choices. The street lights cast elongated shadows that sprawled over the pavement, and every step resonated within the still, desolate avenues. My heart raced, not from exertion, but from the lingering memory of Ryan's kiss, a moment that felt both like a revelation and a betrayal. As I entered our apartment, the door's familiar creak and the lingering scent of Andrew's cologne welcomed me, pulling me back into the reality I had briefly left behind. Andrew sat in his studio, bent over his drafting table, pencil poised in hand. The faint glow highlighted the weary contours of his face, and for an instant, a powerful wave of guilt washed over me. How had I allowed myself to drift so far from the man I had vowed to support? The subsequent days merged into an odd cadence of evasion and facade. I chose to overlook Ryan's messages, convincing myself that creating some distance was the best course of action. However, my determination wavered when another message came through. "Martha, I get that you might be feeling upset, but you're constantly on my mind. I will be at the restaurant on Berkeley Street tomorrow at 7. I truly hope you will join us." I examined the words repeatedly, my heart racing. I was aware I shouldn't go, yet the allure of seeing him once more was simply too strong to ignore. That evening, while Andrew toiled away in his studio, I took my time getting ready. Selecting a navy sweater and a modest necklace with care, the mirror revealed a woman with flushed cheeks, her eyes revealing a sense of anticipation. The restaurant exuded a soft glow, its inviting atmosphere a sharp juxtaposition to the brisk autumn evening beyond the windows. As I entered, Ryan caught my eye right away. He sat by the window, his assured presence tempered by a trace of anxiety. Upon noticing me, his face brightened and he rose, graciously pulling out the chair for me. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said as I took a seat. His voice was soft and genuine, sending a shiver through me. The dialogue started off cautiously, yet as the night unfolded, the protective barriers I had constructed began to fall away. Ryan inquired about my aspirations, my challenges, and the aspects of myself that I had concealed beneath years of monotony. His focus was captivating. He brought a sense of recognition to me that I hadn't experienced in years. I discovered a moment of laughter, exchanging stories, and momentarily setting aside the intricacies of my existence. When dessert made its entrance, it was a communal plate of tiramisu. Our hands grazed each other as we both reached for the same fork. The contact remained, and as our gazes locked, the electric stillness conveyed more than any spoken language ever could. He leaned in, his hand lightly resting on mine, and before I could second-guess my actions, I closed the gap between us. The kiss was gentle, intentional, and charged with a deeper intensity than the initial one. In that moment, the world beyond the restaurant appeared to dissolve, leaving just the two of us. As we finally separated, I noticed a reflection in Ryan's eyes that echoed my own emotions. Yearning, uncertainty, and the burden of understanding that we had traversed a boundary that was now irretrievable. The journey home felt like a haze, my thoughts swirling with feelings that oscillated between excitement and fear. Upon returning to the apartment, the sight of Andrew's work strewn across the dining table reignited the weight of guilt within me. How could I bring together the lively, exciting woman I felt I was with Ryan, and the devoted, Supportive wife I was meant to be for Andrew, rest escaped me that night as I lay in bed, caught between two lives I had crafted for myself. The following morning, the initial rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, yet understanding remained elusive. I understood that I couldn't continue down this path indefinitely, yet at that moment, I found myself ensnared in a tempest of my own creation, unable to release either the memories of what had been or the aspirations of what lay ahead. The days following my drive with Ryan unfolded like a dream, one that left me uncertain whether it was blissful or haunting. My mind wandered through cherished memories with him, contrasting sharply with the persistent quiet of my domestic existence. Andrew's studio transformed into his sanctuary, while I lingered as a mere observer, tracing the outlines of a realm that had slipped beyond my grasp. Guilt coiled within me like a thorny vine, yet I found myself drawn to the flicker of warmth that Ryan had reignited. Just as I was starting to believe I couldn't plunge any further into this intricate web I'd spun, a message came through from Victor. Victor. He was a name that had slipped from my mind for months, maybe even years. Andrew's closest companion from their early years, Victor was always there in the early days of our marriage. He had a way of captivating everyone with his effortless smile and sharp humor, yet hidden beneath his light-hearted exterior was a deep loyalty that had attracted Andrew to him since their childhood. His message was concise yet recognizable. Martha, it feels like forever since we last connected. Let's reconnect soon, drinks are on me. It seemed innocuous enough. I reassured myself that it was merely a friendly gesture, a long-awaited reunion with someone who had always been a part of our lives. Still, an insistent curiosity lingered, a question that eluded my ability to express it fully. I arranged to meet him at a quaint cafe close to the park, a charming place that brought back memories from years past when the three of us would chuckle over lattes and exchange tales of simpler days. As I entered, Victor was there to welcome me, and for a brief moment, it was as if I had walked back in time. His broad shoulders and confident posture remained unchanged, yet there was a newfound softness in his eyes, a quiet understanding that caused my chest to tighten. Martha, he said with a gentle warmth, drawing me into a hug that lasted just a heartbeat longer than necessary. You appear changed. How are you managing? The words resonated more deeply than I anticipated, touching a sensitive spot I hadn't recognized was so exposed. I hesitated for a moment, uncertain about how much to reveal. Yet the earnestness in his gaze compelled me to drop the facade of niceties. Not as well as I'd like, I confessed, my voice barely rising above a whisper. Victor nodded, his expression a mystery yet warm. Why don't we take a seat? The cafe exuded a serene ambience, where the gentle hum of soft jazz intertwined with the delicate clinking of dishes. We nestled into a cozy corner booth, and for the first time in months, I felt truly acknowledged. Victor refrained from overwhelming me with inquiries or attempting to resolve anything. He simply listened, his hands resting on the table as I fumbled through my words. I shared with him the story of Andrew's withdrawal into himself, how our once vibrant home had transformed into a shadow of its former self. I refrained from bringing up Ryan, yet even in the absence of that detail, Victor appeared to grasp the situation. You've been carrying a lot, he said at last, his voice soft and warm. You have always possessed great strength, Martha. Even when times were tough, you always managed to keep a brave face. A harsh chuckle slipped from my lips. Perhaps I excel at the art of illusion. Victor extended his hand across the table, enveloping mine with a gentle touch. The warmth of the touch was steady, anchoring me in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. My heart fluttered in my chest as he intertwined his fingers with mine, his thumb gently gliding over my skin. Pretending doesn't make you weak, he said softly, the words we share connect us, laden with unexpressed significance, revealing our humanity. With a deliberate slowness, he leaned in, his gaze probing mine for any hint of doubt. I was frozen, my mind blank, as his lips pressed against mine. The kiss began gently, hesitant as though he offered me every chance to step back. My refusal only intensified the moment, his grip around my hand growing firmer. The world beyond the cafe faded away, leaving just the two of us in that delicate, ephemeral moment. As we finally separated, Victor's face revealed a blend of yearning and remorse. I'm sorry, he murmured, though his tone hinted at a lack of sincerity. I shook my head, my thoughts a chaotic jumble. No. I'm the one who apologizes. We remained quiet. For a time after that, the atmosphere surrounding us was heavy with unexpressed feelings. In the end, he accompanied me to my car. Our hands lightly grazing each other as we exchanged farewells. That night, as I lay beside Andrew in our bed, his steady breathing filling the room. The burden of my decisions weighed heavily on me like never before. I had kissed 2 men in the span of weeks, neither of whom was my husband, and yet, as shame coursed through me, so did a strange, inexplicable thrill. What was I doing, and how much longer could I allow this to continue before everything fell apart? The subsequent weeks melded into a fog of fleeting instances and shattered feelings. I found myself ensnared between 2 captivating figures, Victor, whose unwavering warmth and comfort enveloped me, and Ryan, whose magnetic charm ignited a fierce passion, leaving me gasping for air. After that night at the cafe, Victor and I started exchanging texts regularly. His messages were insightful, infused with a wit that brought a smile to my face, even against my better judgment. He possessed a means of recalling the person I used to be before the burdens of life transformed me into a stranger I hardly recognize. Ryan, in contrast, was a force of nature. He would send enigmatic messages at strange hours, contemplating you or longing for your presence, perpetually drawing me back into the mesmerizing turmoil he infused into my existence. We encountered each other intermittently, slipping into secluded nooks of eateries or embarking on lengthy drives where we exchanged passionate kisses that left me breathless. Yet, in the stillness of my home, the guilt lingered, eating away at me. Andrew stayed unaware, his attention entirely absorbed by blueprints and sketches. At times, he would linger at the kitchen table, grumbling about design flaws or difficult clients, and I would catch fleeting glimpses of the man I once fell in love with. It made my betrayal sting even more profoundly. On a clear, brisk afternoon, Victor inquired if I would like to join him in the park. I convinced myself it was merely a stroll, just a means to refresh my thoughts, yet the instant I spotted him lingering by the fountain, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, my heart let me down once more. Martha, he murmured gently as I drew near, his smile dissolving the unrecognized tension within me. Victor. I attempted to keep my tone light, but the flutter in my chest betrayed me. As we strolled down the meandering trails, the crisp, golden leaves crunched underfoot, the dialogue unfolded smoothly, effortlessly, as it consistently had with Victor. He shared tales from his job, amusing anecdotes about individuals he had encountered. And I realized I was laughing in a way I hadn't experienced in months. You deserve more than this, he said suddenly, his voice filled with gravity. I looked at him, taken aback. What do you mean? You've been shouldering a great deal, Martha. I perceive it within your gaze. You have changed from who you once were. His words struck a chord I was reluctant to confront. Individuals evolve, Victor. It's simply existence. He halted his steps and pivoted to confront me, his stare resolute. However, you remain the same, not profoundly beneath the surface. You remain the same person who effortlessly brightens a space just by being there, the woman who truly deserves love, not merely attention when it suits others. My breath caught as he approached. As he moved nearer, his hand lightly grazed my arm. Before I could utter a single word, he leaned in, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was both gentle and urgent, as if he were attempting to express everything that language could not. I allowed myself to become immersed in it for a brief moment, yet the guilt returned with overwhelming force. I drew back, my chest rising and falling as I struggled to regain my breath. Victor, this is wrong, I whispered, my voice quivering. He gazed at me with a blend of yearning and comprehension. I understand. But it doesn't seem incorrect to me. Uncertain of my words, I chose to turn and walk away, my mind a tempest of swirling thoughts. Later that evening, as I sat at home, Andrew walked by me in the hallway without so much as a glance. He didn't inquire about my day, nor did he question the reason behind my red eyes. He quietly vanished into his studio, closing the door softly behind him. The stillness of the home was overwhelming. I sat at the kitchen table, gazing at the untouched dinner I had prepared, feeling the weight of everything bearing down on me. My husband remained oblivious, unaware of the betrayals I was committing in ways beyond his comprehension. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Ryan lighting up the screen. Can't stop thinking about you, dinner tomorrow. I paused before responding, my gaze fixed on the screen. Caught between the man who ignited my spirit, and the one who completed me. How had I allowed it to reach this point? And was there truly a way to extricate myself without causing chaos in the aftermath? As I navigated through the vibrant streets, the city lights transformed into a mesmerizing swirl of colors. Method to encounter Ryan. Something had changed within me. The heavy burden of guilt had evolved into a serene acceptance of my true self. Andrew and I were hardly more than roommates now. Two individuals circling one another in a realm that was once filled with affection. The realization should have shattered me, yet it felt more like the long-awaited acceptance of a truth. I had been steering clear for months. The restaurant Ryan had selected was cozy, nestled in a historic structure featuring exposed brick walls and gentle amber lighting. As I entered, I noticed him right away at a corner table, his presence striking even in stillness. He stood as I approached, and the way his eyes roamed over me sent a shiver of anticipation down my spine. You look stunning, he remarked as he gracefully pulled out my chair, his fingers lightly grazed my. As I settled into my seat, a purposeful touch ignited a spark within me. A waiter approached, presenting a bottle of wine that Ryan had previously ordered, a deep, velvety red that I instantly recognized as my favorite. Naturally, he would recall that detail from our discussions. He recalled every detail. To new beginnings, Ryan declared, lifting his glass high. The words lingered in the air, laden with potential, as we savored dishes crafted with skill. Cuisine. Our dialogue unfolded seamlessly. Ryan shared with me his latest project, his hands moving expressively as he painted a picture of his vision for converting an old warehouse into luxury apartments. I found myself leaning forward, captivated by his fervor, and the way his eyes sparkled when he discussed his aspirations. What do you envision for your future, Martha? He inquired. His tone becoming gentler. When was the last time someone inquired about them? The inquiry took me by surprise. I savored a sip of wine, allowing myself a moment to collect my thoughts. I once envisioned a gallery of my own, a place to showcase local artists, host events, and cultivate a space where creativity could flourish. Could thrive. Why didn't you? Life unfolded. And then came marriage. At times, we allow our aspirations to fade so slowly that we hardly realize they have vanished. Ryan extended his hand across the table, enveloping mine with a gentle touch. They can return whenever they choose. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and I felt the familiar heat building between us. The guilt that had once lingered during these moments was strikingly absent. Instead, there existed only a longing, untainted and straightforward. Dance with me, he said suddenly, rising to his feet, and reaching out his hand. I surveyed my surroundings. There is no music. He smiled, that assured, knowing smile that always had the power to make my knees weak. We don't require any. I grasped his hand, and allowed him to guide me to a cozy nook close to our table. His arms encircled my waist, drawing me nearer. The closeness of his body to mine felt undeniably right, in a way I had ceased to question. We moved in harmony, crafting our unique melody in the serene nook of the eatery. You deserve to feel alive, he whispered softly against my ear, to feel desired, to feel like the extraordinary woman you are. I leaned back a bit to observe him, noticing the intensity in his gaze. I leaned in and kissed him, without a moment's pause. The kiss held a distinct quality compared to those we had shared before. There was only freedom, pure and unrestrained. His hand tangled in my hair as he deepened the kiss, and I melted into him, finally allowing myself to feel everything I had been denying. As we separated, both a little breathless, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the restaurant's window. I appeared transformed, vibrant, glowing, like someone who had found herself anew. The wedding ring on my finger glimmered in the light, yet it seemed like a remnant from a bygone era. One that had gradually dissolved into muted sepia hues, while my current reality blazed in vibrant shades. Come home with me, Ryan murmured, his forehead resting against mine. For a moment, I considered Andrew, likely still in his studio, immersed in his own realm. I reflected on our union, how it had faded like a flower neglected in the sun. I reflected on the woman I once was and the woman I have become. Indeed, I stated plainly, and within that utterance lay freedom. As we departed the restaurant, Ryan's hand gently placed on the small of my back, I came to understand that betrayal isn't merely about breaking promises to others. It's fundamentally about honoring the commitments we make to ourselves. Long ago, I made a promise to myself to embrace a life brimming with passion and purpose. At some point, I allowed that promise to escape my grasp. As I strolled through the city streets alongside Ryan, I felt a sense of ownership returning. The night air was invigorating, filled with potential. And for the first time in years, I felt utterly, unapologetically alive. As I stood before the Ritz-Carlton that afternoon, it felt as though I was lost in a dream. The limestone facade loomed above me, graceful yet formidable, as my heart raced within my chest. Room 1504. The figures Ryan had sent me echoed in my thoughts with every stride I took down the soft corridor. Just as my knuckles were about to make contact with the door, it swung wide open. Ryan stood there, striking in his tailored suit, and the kiss he drew me into made the world spin. The space behind him was precisely as I had envisioned, adorned in cream and gold opulence, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the public garden like a masterpiece. A bottle of champagne rested in an ice bucket, crystal flutes poised like sentinels beside it. All is flawless. All is meticulously arranged. The bed embraced us gently as we perched on its edge, the champagne refreshing and chilled as it flowed smoothly down my throat. Ryan's fingers intertwined with mine, and that unmistakable spark surged through me. I found myself enveloped in the present, caught in the intensity of his closeness, and the anticipation of what lay ahead. Then the knock came. 3 sharp raps that fractured my reality. As Ryan opened the door with an air of tranquility and assurance, a shiver of unease began to creep down my spine. Then Victor stepped in, and my world shattered. The champagne glass slipped from my unsteady grip, the plush carpet absorbing both the glass and the noise. My mind struggled to comprehend what lay before me. Victor and Ryan sat in the same room, their faces reflecting a shared expression of gentle concern as they looked at me. The truth oozed from their words like a toxic spill. They had been acquainted for years, uncovering their mutual link to me through casual dialogue. What began as anger between them had evolved into a bizarre experiment. They had been observing me, biding their time for my decision, as though my heart were a game they could manipulate. The city stretched out beneath us through those enormous windows, countless lives carrying on as mine fell apart around me. Each kiss, each gentle moment, each softly spoken promise, everything acquired a fresh, corrupted significance. They had crafted this intricate performance, biding their time to observe my movements, to discover which suitor would finally win my affection. And Andrew, my husband's name, resonated in my thoughts like a faint chime. He stayed unaware, immersed in his architectural sketches and career letdowns, while I found myself ensnared in this web of deceit. The irony of it all felt suffocating. I couldn't endure another second in that room, unable to withstand the pressure of their collective stare. My escape unfolded in a haze, clutching my purse, urging my legs to propel me toward the door. Their presence loomed behind me, an almost tangible weight, yet I found myself unable to glance back. I was unable to confront the reflections that awaited me in their gaze. The descent in the elevator felt endless, each floor passing as if it were a lifetime. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and the image staring back at me from the gleaming doors was that of a woman I hardly knew. Who had I transformed into, the secure refuge of Victor's comprehension? The fervent journey of Ryan's commitment, the cozy familiarity of my union with Andrew, all of it blended in my thoughts like watercolors merging into one another. Stepping onto the Boston streets was akin to surfacing from the depths of a vast ocean. The crispness of the autumn air filled my lungs, while the late afternoon sun cast everything in a golden hue. Individuals hurried by, engrossed in their own narratives, their own conflicts, as I remained motionless on the sidewalk, free from all that I believed I understood. The horizon unfolded ahead, an uncharted journey brimming with opportunities and challenges. There There was no returning to the person I once was, no reversing the decisions I had taken. The sole path lay ahead, into the unknown. I was completely unaware of the direction the narrative would take me, or what conclusion lay just ahead. The one thing I was sure of was that everything had changed forever. My existence had transformed into a narrative I no longer recognized, with a conclusion I couldn't foresee, and somewhere in that opulent hotel suite, 2 men stood by, eager to see the direction my heart would sway, while back at home, my husband remained oblivious to exist within his realm of plans and lost chances. I found myself at the intersection of countless lives, myriad possibilities, and untold futures, and for the very first time, I was utterly at a loss. Which route to follow?